Nero's feathers ruffled as he watched the scene unfold in the elegant living room. His bright eyes tracked Olivia's every move as she roughly handled baby Brandon, her actions hidden from the security cameras by carefully chosen blind spots. The African grey parrot shifted uneasily on his perch, distressed by what he witnessed day after day. Diana and Benjamin had adopted Nero long before Brandon came into their lives. The couple worked demanding hours at their respective medical practices, which led them to hire Olivia as Brandon's full-time nanny. On the surface, she appeared perfect, experienced, well-recommended, and always properly dressed. But Nero knew better. When Diana and Benjamin were home, Olivia was the picture of devotion, cooing at Brandon, singing lullabies, and providing detailed reports of their daily activities. The moment they left, however, her demeanor would change completely. Her gentle voice became harsh, her tender touches turned rough, and baby Brandon's cries were met with cruel indifference. Nero had always been an unusually perceptive bird, picking up on subtle changes in mood and behavior. His previous owner, an elderly language professor named Theodore, had spent years teaching him not just to mimic words, but to understand context and meaning. Now those lessons served a vital purpose as Nero observed the mounting tension in the household. The parrot noticed how Brandon would wail in distress whenever Olivia entered the room, how she would grab his tiny arms too tightly when moving him, and how she would ignore his cries for hours. But what troubled Nero most were the whispered phone conversations he overheard late at night when Olivia thought everyone was asleep. "The plan is almost ready," she would murmur into her phone, pacing near Nero's cage. "Once I get access to their accounts, yes, I know what to do with the baby. No one will suspect anything." Nero's vocabulary was extensive, but he struggled to find the right words to communicate the danger. He tried various phrases: bad lady, baby crying, help needed, but Diana and Benjamin merely thought he was mimicking random phrases as parrots often do. Their dismissal of his warnings only made Nero more determined to expose the truth. One evening, while Diana was feeding Brandon before bedtime, Nero noticed Olivia in the kitchen mixing something into the baby's formula. His heart raced as he watched her carefully measure drops from a small dark bottle, her movements precise and deliberate. The parrot's instinct screamed that this was wrong. That night Nero made a decision. He had to find a way to protect Brandon, no matter the cost. But how could a parrot convince humans of such a serious threat? As darkness fell over the house, Nero remained awake, his mind working through possible solutions while Olivia's shadowy figure moved through the rooms below, preparing for whatever sinister plan she had in motion. Dawn brought no comfort. Nero watched as Diana prepared for another busy day at the hospital, her movements hurried but gentle as she kissed Brandon goodbye. Benjamin had already left for an early surgery, leaving Olivia in charge once again. The parrot's anxiety grew as he observed the nanny's practiced transformation, her warm smile dropping the moment Diana's car disappeared from view. "Time for your medicine, little one," Olivia said, her voice dripping with false sweetness as she approached Brandon's high chair. Nero noticed she wasn't carrying the usual medication prescribed by the pediatrician. Instead, she pulled out the mysterious dark bottle from the previous night. Brandon began crying immediately, as if sensing something wrong. His tiny hands pushed away the bottle Olivia pressed against his lips. "Stop being difficult," she hissed, her gentle facade cracking. "Just drink it." Nero couldn't contain himself any longer. "No bad poison!" he screeched, flapping his wings frantically. The sudden outburst startled Olivia, causing her to drop the bottle. It shattered on the kitchen floor, its contents spreading in a sinister puddle. Olivia's face contorted with rage. "Stupid bird," she snarled, advancing toward Nero's cage. "You've been watching me too closely, haven't you?" Her fingers gripped the cage bars tightly. "Well, we'll have to do something about that." Just then, Alexis's voice called from the front door. "Hello? Anyone home?" Diana's sister had a habit of dropping by unannounced, much to Olivia's constant irritation. The nanny quickly composed herself, kicking the broken glass under the cabinet and wiping the spilled liquid with her shoe. "We're in the kitchen," Olivia called back, her voice honey-sweet once again. Nero watched as she hastily cleaned up the evidence, noting how she stuffed the glass shards into her pocket rather than the trash. Alexis entered with young Brooke in tow, carrying a basket of fresh muffins. Her eyes immediately went to Brandon, who was still crying. "Is everything okay? He seems upset." "Oh, he's just being fussy about his breakfast," Olivia explained smoothly. "You know how babies can be." She lifted Brandon from his high chair, bouncing him with apparent affection. But Nero noticed something else, a small notebook that had fallen from Olivia's pocket during her hasty cleanup. It lay partially hidden under the kitchen table, its pages containing what looked like numbers and notes in her precise handwriting. While the women chatted, Brooke wandered over to Nero's cage. The young girl had always been fascinated by the parrot, often sharing secrets with him during her visits. "Hello, Nero," she whispered, slipping him a piece of her muffin through the cage bars. Nero saw his opportunity. "Help Brandon," he whispered back, remembering how Theodore had taught him to string words together meaningfully. "Bad lady hurts baby." Brooke's eyes widened. Unlike the adults who dismissed Nero's warnings as random chatter, children often paid more attention to animals. "What do you mean?" she asked quietly. "Poison in bottle," Nero continued, his voice low but urgent. "Notes under table." Brooke glanced at the kitchen table, noticing the notebook with the casual curiosity of a child. She walked over and picked it up before anyone could stop her. "What's this?" she asked innocently. Olivia's reaction was instant and violent. She practically shoved Brandon into Alexis's arms and lunged for the notebook. "That's private," she snapped, her careful mask slipping again. The sudden movement and harsh tone made Brandon wail louder, and even Brooke stepped back in surprise. Alexis, still holding the crying baby, noticed the strange tension in the room. "Is everything all right, Olivia? You seem different." "Everything's fine," Olivia insisted, clutching the notebook to her chest, but her composed facade had cracked, revealing something darker underneath. "I think it's time for Brandon's nap. Perhaps you could visit another time." Alexis didn't move. Instead, she looked more closely at Brandon, noticing for the first time the slight bruising on his arms where Olivia had gripped him too tightly. Her maternal instincts, already aroused by the tense atmosphere, went into higher alert. "I think I'll stay for a while," Alexis said firmly, her voice taking on a steely edge that Nero had never heard before. "In fact, I might call Diana and see if she can come home early today." Olivia's expression shifted again, calculating and cold. "That won't be necessary. I have everything under control." She reached for Brandon, but Alexis took a step back. "Brooke, honey," Alexis said calmly, though her eyes never left Olivia. "Why don't you go call Aunt Diana? Use my phone. It's in my purse by the door." Nero watched the scene unfold with growing tension. He could see Olivia's hands twitching, her eyes darting between Alexis, Brandon, and the front door. The notebook she held contained evidence of something, perhaps her plans, her true intentions, or worse. "Hurt baby," Nero screeched again, louder this time. "Bad lady poison." "That bird has been nothing but trouble," Olivia said, her voice tight with anger, "always making noise, interfering with Brandon's sleep. I've suggested to Diana that we should get rid of it." "Really?" Alexis replied, her suspicion growing. "Diana loves that parrot. She's had Nero for years and she's never mentioned anything about getting rid of him." The tension in the kitchen was broken by the sound of Brooke's voice from the hallway. "Aunt Diana, can you come home? Something's wrong with Olivia." Olivia's composure shattered completely. She made a sudden move toward the front door, but Alexis blocked her path. "You're not going anywhere until Diana gets here," Alexis declared, her free arm extended to prevent Olivia from passing. Nero watched as Olivia's face transformed into something truly frightening. Gone was any pretense of the caring nanny, replaced by a calculating coldness that confirmed every suspicion he'd had. "You don't understand," Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This was supposed to be perfect. I had everything planned. The baby would get sick, nothing too serious at first, but with my special medicine, he would get worse instead of better. Diana and Benjamin would be devastated, too distracted to notice the missing money until it was too late." Alexis gasped, instinctively holding Brandon tighter. "You were going to poison—" Nero screeched again. "Bad lady. Poison baby!" The sound of a car screeching to a halt outside made everyone freeze. Footsteps pounded up the front walk. Diana had arrived home in record time, likely breaking several speed limits in the process. The scene she burst in on would be forever etched in her memory. Alexis backing away from Olivia, clutching Brandon protectively. Brooke hiding behind her mother, Nero flapping and screeching in his cage, and Olivia looking nothing like the caring nanny she'd pretended to be, holding a notebook full of secrets that were about to be revealed. Diana stood frozen in the doorway, her medical coat still on, stethoscope dangling from her neck. The tension in the kitchen was thick enough to cut with a knife. Her eyes darted between her sister holding Brandon, Olivia's threatening stance, and Nero's agitated state. "What's going on here?" Diana demanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to handling crisis situations. Before anyone could answer, Nero's voice rang out clear and precise, shocking everyone with its clarity. "She hurts, baby. Poison in bottle. Look under cabinet." The parrot's words were unmistakable this time, no longer random phrases but a coherent warning. Diana's eyes widened as she processed this unexpected revelation. Olivia lunged for her purse, but Alexis was quicker. "Brooke, grab that bag," she called to her daughter. The young girl snatched Olivia's purse just as the nanny reached for it, spilling its contents across the floor. Among the scattered items was a collection of vials, syringes, and what appeared to be hospital prescription pads. Diana gasped as she recognized the labels on the vials. As a doctor, she knew exactly what they were. Powerful sedatives and medications that should never be anywhere near a baby. "Those are from my hospital," she whispered, the horror of realization dawning on her face. "How did you get these?" Olivia's composure cracked completely. Her laugh was hollow and bitter. "You doctors think you're so clever, don't you? Always too busy saving other people's lives to notice what's happening in your own home. Did you know your precious Brandon cries for hours when you're gone? That he flinches when I come near him?" Alexis held Brandon tighter, noting the slight tremor in his tiny body at the sound of Olivia's voice. The baby's reaction spoke volumes about what he had endured. "Check her notebook," Nero squawked insistently. "Numbers. Plans." Diana picked up the fallen notebook, her hands shaking as she flipped through the pages. Inside were detailed notes about the family's schedule, bank account numbers, and what appeared to be calculations for steadily increasing doses of various medications. "It was perfect," Olivia spat, her facade completely gone now. "I had access to everything. Your home, your baby, your accounts." The plan was simple. Make the baby sick slowly, just enough to worry you but not enough to raise suspicion. While you were distracted with his declining health, I would handle your finances, your bills, your accounts. "Handle our accounts?" Diana's voice was barely a whisper. "Your signatures weren't hard to forge," Olivia continued, a hint of pride creeping into her voice, "and grieving parents rarely check their bank statements carefully. By the time Brandon's condition became critical, I would have transferred enough money to disappear completely. The devastated parents would be too broken to notice the missing funds until it was far too late." The sound of Brandon's whimper cut through the tension like a knife. Diana took a step forward, her professional calm warring with maternal fury. "How many times?" she demanded. "How many times did you hurt my baby?" Olivia's silence was more damning than any answer could have been. Nero, however, had more to reveal. "Night medicine, bad medicine. Show them, show them." Alexis's eyes narrowed. "What's he talking about?" "The cabinet," Brooke piped up, remembering Nero's earlier warning. "He said to look under the cabinet." Diana dropped to her knees, reaching under the kitchen cabinet where Olivia had kicked the broken bottle earlier. Her hand emerged with shards of dark glass, still wet with an unknown liquid. What was in this bottle? Diana's voice was deadly quiet. Before Olivia could respond, the front door opened again. Benjamin had arrived, likely called by Brooke when she contacted Diana. His presence seemed to trigger something in Olivia, perhaps the realization that her carefully constructed plan was completely unraveling. "You don't understand," she said, her voice taking on a desperate edge. "This wasn't just about the money. I wanted to prove a point. All you wealthy doctors with your perfect lives thinking you can buy good childcare like you buy everything else, you never really checked my references, did you? Never really verified my credentials?" Benjamin's face drained of color. As if in answer to his unspoken question, Nero began rattling off names. "Sarah Thompson, Michael Anderson, Baby James. Names that meant nothing to the family but clearly meant something to Olivia, judging by her reaction. "Shut up!" she screamed at the parrot. "Shut up! Shut up!" But Nero wouldn't be silenced. "Other babies, other families, look them up." Diana pulled out her phone with trembling hands, quickly searching the names Nero had spoken. Her face grew paler with each search result. They're all families who lost babies under mysterious circumstances. All of them had nannies who disappeared afterward. The revelation hung in the air like a thundercloud. Olivia wasn't just a fraud, she was something far more sinister, a systematic predator who had made a career out of targeting wealthy families, harming their children, and disappearing with their money. Benjamin moved with surprising speed for someone who had just finished a long surgery. He positioned himself between Olivia and the door, his voice steady despite the anger evident in his eyes. "The police are already on their way. Alexis called them right after she contacted Diana." Olivia's eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal. She seemed to be calculating her chances, weighing her options. The sound of distant sirens made her decision for her. She bolted toward the back door, but she hadn't counted on Nero. The parrot had been watching, waiting for just such a moment. As Olivia ran past his cage, he extended his wing through the bars, catching her sleeve. The unexpected snag was enough to throw her off balance. She stumbled, crashing into the kitchen table. The fall sent her crashing to the floor, the contents of her pockets scattering across the tile. Among them was a small USB drive that skittered under the refrigerator. Nero's sharp eyes caught its trajectory. "Evidence!" he screeched. "Under fridge, more proof!" The sirens were getting closer now. Olivia lay on the floor, the fight seeming to drain out of her as she realized there was nowhere left to run. But there was something in her eyes, a cold, calculating look that suggested this wasn't over yet. The police were pulling up outside, their red and blue lights painting the kitchen walls in alternating colors. But Nero kept his eyes fixed on Olivia, remembering something he had overheard during one of her late-night phone conversations. Something about a backup plan and insurance. The parrot had a feeling they hadn't uncovered all of Olivia's secrets yet, and the worst might be yet to come. The kitchen had transformed into a crime scene. Police officers photographed evidence, while detectives interviewed family members. Brandon had been taken to the hospital for a thorough examination, with Diana accompanying him. Benjamin remained behind to assist with the investigation, his medical expertise proving valuable in identifying the various substances found in Olivia's possession. Nero watched from his cage as an officer retrieved the USB drive from under the refrigerator. His sharp eyes hadn't missed how Olivia's slight smile had widened when they plugged it into a laptop. Something wasn't right. "Careful! Trap! Trap!" Nero screeched, but his warning came too late. The moment the drive was accessed, every computer in the house began emitting a harsh beeping sound. Screens flickered and went dark, and the home security system suddenly deactivated. "It's a virus," one of the officers announced. "She's wiped everything, security footage, computer files, everything that could have contained evidence of her activities." But Olivia's satisfaction was short-lived. Alexis stepped forward, holding up her phone. "Not everything," she said. "I've been recording since I arrived this morning. Every confession, every threat, it's all here." The smirk vanished from Olivia's face. She hadn't counted on Alexis's quick thinking, hadn't factored in the protective instincts of an aunt who had sensed something wrong the moment she walked in. Meanwhile, Brooke tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mum, remember when Nero started talking to me? I did what you always taught me. I took notes in my diary. Everything he said, everything I saw." The detective's interest was immediately piqued. "You have notes? From how long ago?" Brooke nodded earnestly. "I write down everything when we visit. Nero started trying to tell me things weeks ago, but I didn't understand at first. Then I started noticing things too, how Brandon would cry when Olivia came near, how she would act different when she thought no one was watching." The detective gathered Brooke's diary as evidence, praising her observant nature. But Nero remained agitated. There was still something else, something important they were missing. "Phone calls, night talks," he squawked insistently. "Others involved." This caught everyone's attention. The detective turned to Olivia, who had gone notably pale. Other people involved care to explain? Olivia's silence spoke volumes. The detective signaled to his partner, who began reviewing the call logs from Olivia's seized phone. The numbers told a disturbing story. Regular calls to multiple burner phones, all during late-night hours. She's part of a network, Benjamin realized, his voice heavy with horror. She's not working alone. As if confirming his words, Olivia's phone suddenly lit up with a message. Before anyone could stop her, she managed to glance at it, and her composed mask slipped completely. For the first time, she looked genuinely afraid. "You don't understand," she whispered, all pretense gone. "They'll come for me. They always come for anyone who gets caught." The detective leaned forward. "Who will come for you, Olivia? Give us names and we can protect you." But Olivia shook her head violently. "You can't protect me, nobody can. They're everywhere. Hospitals, childcare agencies, reference services. How do you think we get our credentials? How do you think we find our targets?" The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about one malicious nanny. It was about an organized group targeting vulnerable families through seemingly legitimate channels. Nero, however, wasn't finished. He began rattling off more names, addresses, and fragments of conversations he'd overheard during Olivia's late-night calls. Each word was another piece of evidence, another thread unraveling a conspiracy that went far deeper than anyone had imagined. The detective was furiously taking notes, his expression growing grimmer with each revelation. "We're going to need witness protection," he muttered to his partner, "for all of them." Benjamin's phone rang. It was Diana calling from the hospital. The examination had revealed traces of various substances in Brandon's system, but thankfully nothing had caused permanent damage. They had caught Olivia's scheme before she could fully implement her sinister plans. But as relief washed over the room, Nero noticed something that made his feathers stand on end. Olivia's fear had vanished, replaced by that calculating look he knew so well. She was watching the officer's catalogue evidence, her eyes tracking every bag, every document. The Parrot suspected she was already planning her next move. "Watch her. Don't trust," Nero warned, drawing attention back to Olivia just as her hand moved toward her collar. A sharp-eyed officer caught the movement and rushed forward, discovering a hidden needle she had tried to reach. "Suicide pill," the officer announced, securing the evidence. "Classic spy technique. She wasn't planning to live long enough to talk." This discovery changed everything. The detective immediately called for additional security. Olivia would need to be watched constantly, both to prevent her from harming herself and to protect her from whoever she was working with. As Olivia was led away in handcuffs, she passed by Nero's cage. For a brief moment, their eyes met. In that instant, Nero saw something in her expression that chilled him to his core. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Back at the hospital, Diana held Brandon close, grateful for his safety, but shaken by how close they'd come to disaster. The baby was recovering well, his system already clearing the foreign substances Olivia had administered, but the psychological impacts would take longer to heal, both for Brandon and his parents. Alexis arrived at the hospital with Brooke, bringing updated news from the investigation. The police were uncovering more evidence with each passing hour. Olivia's USB drive, despite destroying local files, had left traces that computer forensics might be able to recover. More importantly, Brooke's diary and Alexis's recording provided solid evidence that couldn't be erased. But Nero, watching from his travel cage, Benjamin had insisted on bringing him to the hospital, knew there were still threads to unravel. Olivia's network was vast, and they had only scratched the surface. The Parrot kept his vigilant watch, ready to protect his family from whatever dangers still lurked in the shadows. As night fell over the hospital, Diana made a decision. She had installed security cameras throughout their house, but had always felt it was unnecessary to put one in Brandon's room, trusting Olivia completely. That trust had nearly cost them everything. She vowed never to be so naive again. Nero settled into his temporary perch in Brandon's hospital room, his presence bringing comfort to both the baby and his parents. The Parrot might have exposed one threat, but he sensed that their ordeal wasn't over. Somewhere out there, Olivia's associates were watching, waiting, planning their next move, and Nero would be ready when they made it. The investigation was expanding, reaching into dark corners of the childcare industry that few had suspected existed. But for now, in the quiet hospital room, Nero focused on what mattered most, keeping watch over the sleeping baby, whose life he had helped save, while remaining alert for any sign of the storm he knew was still to come. The hospital room had become a temporary fortress. Officers were still stationed outside, and only pre-approved medical staff could enter. Brandon was recovering well, but Diana and Benjamin remained on high alert, scrutinizing every person who came near their son. Nero maintained his vigilant watch from his new perch, installed especially in the hospital room. His presence had a calming effect on Brandon, who would smile and reach for the parrot whenever he was awake. The bond between them had grown stronger through their shared ordeal. Detective Reynolds, who had been assigned to lead the investigation, arrived with troubling news. "We've been digging into Olivia's background," he explained to Diana and Benjamin. "Everything about her. Her credentials, her references, even her identity. It's all fabricated. But the forgeries are professional grade. This isn't the work of one person." Alexis, who had taken temporary leave from her job to support her sister, was helping piece together the evidence from Brooke's diary. "Look at this," she said, pointing to one of her daughter's entries. "Brooke wrote down something interesting Nero said weeks ago, about Olivia talking to someone about the next family and moving up the coast." The detective's expression darkened. "That matches our theory. We've uncovered similar cases up and down the coastline. Wealthy families, mysterious nanny figures, children getting sick, money disappearing. But every time someone got close to making a connection, evidence would vanish and witnesses would go silent." Nero suddenly became agitated, hopping from foot to foot on his perch. "Phone in plant! Phone in plant!" he screeched, pointing his beak toward a decorative potted plant in the corner of the room. Detective Reynolds carefully approached the plant and, reaching deep into the soil, pulled out a small burner phone. It was still warm, recently used. She must have hidden it during one of her hospital visits, Benjamin realized, remembering how Olivia had brought fresh flowers every few days, always insisting on arranging them herself. The phone was quickly sealed in an evidence bag, but Nero wasn't finished. More phones, home plant, office plant. The detective immediately dispatched officers to search all the planters in Diana and Benjamin's home and offices. Each one yielded another hidden phone or recording device. Olivia had been monitoring them far more extensively than anyone had realized. Meanwhile, in the hospital's computer lab, tech experts were working to recover data from the virus-infected systems. Despite Olivia's attempts to destroy everything, fragments of information remained. "It's a complete surveillance operation," the lead technician explained. "She wasn't just monitoring your activities, she was gathering information about your colleagues, your patients, your banking habits. Everything about your lives was being catalogued and analyzed." Diana felt a chill run down her spine. "But why? Why go to such lengths?" "Because you weren't the only targets," Detective Reynolds explained. "We've identified similar surveillance patterns at other hospitals up the coast. They're profiling medical professionals, doctors, surgeons, specialists, people with high incomes, demanding schedules, and young children." Benjamin's medical training kicked in as he processed this information. They're looking for specific vulnerabilities, families where both parents work long hours, where they'd need to rely heavily on childcare. "Exactly," the detective confirmed. "And they're patient. They spend months, sometimes years, gathering intelligence before making their move." Nero, who had been listening intently, suddenly perked up. "Window! Look, window!" Everyone turned to the hospital room's window. In the building across the street, a figure quickly ducked out of sight. Detective Reynolds immediately radioed for officers to search the building, but Nero's warning had come too late. By the time they reached the opposite building, they found only an abandoned camera set up and a half-drunk cup of coffee still warm. They were being watched. The discovery prompted immediate action. The hospital room was moved to an interior location with no windows. Security was doubled, but the incident had shaken everyone's sense of safety. That evening, as Brandon slept peacefully in his new room, Diana watched Nero standing guard. The parrot hadn't relaxed his vigilance for a moment, his head turning at every sound. his bright eyes scanning constantly for threats. "You've been protecting him all along, haven't you?" she whispered to Nero, "even before we knew there was danger." Nero bobbed his head once, then spoke with unexpected clarity. "Family protect family." The simple statement brought tears to Diana's eyes. She reached out and gently stroked Nero's feathers. "Yes, yes we do. And your family too." Detective Reynolds had set up a command center in an unused hospital conference room. Maps covered the walls, showing locations of similar cases connected by red strings. Photos of suspected network members, most only partially glimpsed on security cameras, were grouped together, forming a shadowy organizational chart. But it was Brooke's diary that provided the most crucial breakthrough. Her childish entries, faithfully recording Nero's warnings and her own observations, contained details that might otherwise have been missed. She had noted down snippets of phone conversations, descriptions of visitors, even small changes in Brandon's behavior that adults had overlooked. "Look at this," Alexis said, pointing to one entry. "Brooke wrote that weeks ago. Nero became very upset when a delivery man came to the house. She thought it was strange because he usually likes visitors." The detective quickly cross-referenced the date. "There was no scheduled delivery that day. None of your regular services reported being in your neighborhood." Benjamin frowned. Someone was scouting the house, probably documenting security measures, escape routes. The detective's voice trailed off as he noticed Nero's increasing agitation. The parrot was pacing on his perch, clearly distressed. Coming soon, he warned. Before anyone could question what he meant, the hospital's lights flickered and went out. Emergency generators kicked in immediately, but in those few seconds of darkness, Nero's warning took on new urgency. They hear! They hear!" he screeched, his eyes fixed on the door. Detective Reynolds immediately radioed for backup, but the response was garbled. Someone was jamming their communications. In the confusion, a figure in hospital scrubs slipped into the room, moving with practiced efficiency. But Nero was ready. The moment the intruder reached for Brandon's crib, the parrot launched himself from his perch, wings spread wide, creating enough of a distraction for Benjamin to tackle the would-be kidnapper. More officers rushed in, and the intruder was quickly subdued. When they removed the surgical mask, everyone gasped. The face belonged to one of Olivia's regular references, a woman who had vouched for her credentials. She was part of the network. "It's over," Detective Reynolds declared, securing the suspect. But Nero remained agitated. More coming." He was right. The power outage had been a coordinated effort across the hospital. Security cameras caught glimpses of other figures in scrubs, all converging on their location. The network was making its move, determined to silence Olivia's victims before she could expose them. What they hadn't counted on was Brooke. The young girl, who had been staying with her mother in a nearby room, had continued her habit of taking notes. She had noticed and recorded suspicious activities throughout the hospital, staff members she didn't recognize, maintenance workers in areas they shouldn't be, unusual patterns in shift changes. Thanks to her observations, the police were able to quickly identify and apprehend the infiltrators one by one. The fake hospital staff were caught, each arrest revealing more about the network's operations. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. The USB drive that had initially seemed to destroy evidence had actually created a hidden backup, automatically uploading data to a secure server. The virus had been a smokescreen, designed to make the network think their tracks were covered. Olivia, it turned out, had been playing both sides. While working for the criminal network, she had also been gathering evidence against them, building her own insurance policy. When cornered, she had activated the backup, ensuring that if she went down, she wouldn't go down alone. The final confrontation came as dawn broke over the hospital. The network's leadership, realizing their operation was compromised, made one last desperate attempt to contain the situation. But they had underestimated the power of a family united in protection of their youngest member. Nero, ever vigilant, spotted the final intruder, the network's leader, attempting to access the hospital through a service entrance. His warning allowed the police to set up a perfect ambush, and the mastermind behind the operation was finally captured. In the aftermath, The full scope of the network's activities came to light. They had been operating for years, targeting wealthy families across the country. Olivia's detailed records, combined with Brooke's diary entries and Nero's testimony, carefully translated and documented, provided enough evidence to dismantle the entire organization. Brandon's examination revealed that, thanks to Nero's early warnings, he had suffered no lasting effects from Olivia's treatments. The psychological trauma would take time to heal, but surrounded by love and support, his natural resilience began to shine through. Diana and Benjamin made significant changes to their lives. They adjusted their work schedules to spend more time at home, and when they did need childcare, they implemented rigorous verification processes. But more importantly, they learned to trust their instincts and to listen to those who showed genuine care for their family. Nero was hailed as a hero. His story made headlines, highlighting the remarkable bond between animals and humans and the importance of paying attention to their warnings. But for Nero, the greatest reward was simply being with his family, watching Brandon grow stronger each day. Brooke's diary became a crucial piece of evidence in multiple cases, and her observant nature earned her special recognition from the police department. Her experience inspired her to start a peer support group for children to help them recognize and report suspicious behavior. Alexis and her family moved closer to Diana and Benjamin, strengthening their family bonds. The sisters realized that together they were stronger and better able to protect what mattered most. As for Olivia and her network, justice was served. The evidence was overwhelming, and the sentences were severe. The organization was dismantled, its members scattered or imprisoned. But perhaps more importantly, their exposure led to major reforms in childcare licensing and verification processes. One quiet evening, as the family gathered in their newly secured home, Nero watched Brandon playing safely on the floor. The baby looked up at his feathered protector and smiled, a pure, joyful expression that made all their trials worthwhile. "Family safe now," Nero declared softly, settling onto his perch. Diana smiled, reaching out to stroke his feathers. "Yes, Nero. Thanks to you. We're all safe now." Brandon grew into a happy, healthy child with no memory of his early trauma. But the story of Nero, the parrot who saved him, became a cherished family legend, passed down as a testament to the power of love, vigilance, and the unexpected heroes who sometimes enter our lives. The experience changed them all. They learned that real family isn't just about blood relations, it's about the bonds we forge through trust, protection, and unconditional love. And sometimes those bonds can come from the most unexpected sources, like a brave parrot who refused to stay silent in the face of danger. Nero remained their faithful guardian, his watchful eyes never wavering in their protection of the family he loved. His warnings had not only saved Brandon, but had exposed a darker side of the childcare industry, leading to changes that would protect countless other families in the future. And so their story became one of hope, proof that even in our darkest moments, heroes can emerge from unexpected places, and love can triumph over evil as long as we have the courage to listen and act when warnings come our way. As years passed, the investigation into the network continued to yield results. Multiple cells across different cities were uncovered and dismantled. The organization had been more extensive than anyone had initially realized, with connections reaching into legitimate childcare agencies, hospitals, and even government departments that were supposed to oversee and regulate these services. The case prompted a nationwide review of childcare licensing procedures. Background checks became more thorough. References were verified with greater scrutiny, and parents were encouraged to trust their instincts when something felt wrong. Detective Reynolds, who had led the investigation, wrote a comprehensive manual for law enforcement agencies on recognizing and combating similar criminal networks. His work was credited with preventing dozens of similar schemes from taking root in other communities. Diana, applying her medical expertise in a new direction, helped develop protocols for hospitals to identify potential abuse cases that might otherwise go unnoticed. Benjamin contributed by creating a specialized medical clinic focused on supporting children who had experienced trauma, offering both physical and psychological healing. Alexis and Brooke became advocates for family safety, giving talks to parent groups about the importance of vigilance and the signs to watch for when hiring caregivers. Brooke's diary, with personal details removed, became a teaching tool, showing how even a child's observations could make a critical difference. And through it all, Nero remained at the heart of their family. The parrot, who had once been dismissed as making random noise, was now understood to be a keen observer and protector. His vocabulary continued to grow, but he no longer needed to sound desperate warnings. Instead, his gentle "family safe" became a favorite phrase, a reassurance that all was well. As for the conspirators, they faced justice in full measure. Olivia, despite her attempts to bargain using the evidence she had gathered, received a lengthy sentence. The judge acknowledged her 11th-hour cooperation, but noted that it didn't erase the harm she had caused or had intended to cause. The network's leader, a person who had suffered personal tragedy and twisted it into a justification for victimizing others, showed no remorse. The court heard testimony about dozens of families who had narrowly escaped their schemes and others who hadn't been so fortunate, but amid the darkness, there were unexpected moments of light. Some of the lower-level participants in the network, when faced with the full reality of what they had been part of, provided valuable information that helped identify and support other victims. A few even dedicated themselves to making amends, working with authorities to create better protection systems. The experience left no one unchanged. Diana and Benjamin, once focused almost exclusively on their medical careers, found a new balance that put family at the center. Alexis discovered strength she hadn't known she possessed. Brooke developed an empathy and awareness beyond her years, tempered with the resilience of a child who had faced darkness and helped to overcome it. And Brandon, too young to remember the danger he had faced, grew up surrounded by love and protection, blessed with a family that had learned through hardship just how precious their bonds truly were. As for Nero, his legacy went beyond the immediate family he had saved. His story inspired others to pay attention to the silent witnesses in their lives, the ones who observe without judgment and try, in whatever ways they can, to communicate what they see. The tale of a parrot who understood the difference between right and wrong, who recognized danger when human adults missed it, and who persisted until someone listened, became more than just a family story. It became a reminder that wisdom and perception can come from unexpected sources, and that sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply pay attention. In the end, what had begun as a terrible threat became the foundation for something beautiful, a family strengthened by crisis, communities made safer through awareness, and a legacy of protection that would continue for generations to come. And at the center of it all was Nero, the silent witness who had found his voice just when it mattered most. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of captivating stories. I trust you found today's narrative as engaging as I did. If you enjoyed this exploration into fascinating and compelling narratives, kindly indicate your appreciation by liking this video. Are you watching on mobile? Show your appreciation with a double tap for hype. For more captivating stories and journeys into the heart of compelling storytelling, please subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss a single upload. Your thoughts and interpretations are most welcome. Please share your perspectives on today's story in the comments below. And if you believe others would find this content engaging, please consider sharing the video with your network. Until our next journey into the world of captivating tales, I bid you farewell.